Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is what we're looking at today. It is a Craftsman LT1000 riding lawnmower. This one's got a 38-inch deck on it, which is demolished. It's no good. The deck, she's broken. There's supposed to be a bracket there, and this twisted piece of steel rope is supposed to be a metal rod to hold the deck alignment correct. This one's a 38-inch deck, 14.5 horsepower. It's nice and clean. I pressure washed it the other day just to get it ready for me to work on, because it's nice when it's clean. Overall, the tractor looks like it's in great condition. Like, it looks really nice. The paint's not rusted and crappy. As far as running, I don't know. No carburetor. This is the way I got it. No carb on it. I'm not sure if it runs at all. So, I do have a spare engine to put onto this off a parts tractor that I'm not going to repair the parts tractor. And I have a used deck for a Craftsman, and it appears to have the same mounts. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull this deck out of here, and I'm going to compare it to the replacement one that I have. If it's compatible, perfect. We're going to carry on with the project. But if I don't have a deck available for this tractor, this one's going to become a lost cause, because it's not worth me getting a new deck to put on an old rider. This may also become a parts machine. So fingers crossed. First thing we're going to do is pull the deck out and go from there. We'll see. You know, the deck is going to definitely make or break this project, because like I said, I can put an engine on there, replace it, rebuild it, repair it, whatever I need to do to get the engine running. But the deck itself is going to be hit and miss. So I'm going to get you in a stand. I've got the tractor pushed to the one side of the shop. On this tractor, it seems that it's going to be easier to get the deck out of this side. Usually I take them out the other side, but the left side. But this one I'm going to pull out this side. So, alright, let's get some stuff gathered and we'll jump in. Alright, so I've got the original deck off the tractor. This is my usable replacement deck. This one is a 38-inch deck. It even says it on the discharge chute. This one is a 42-inch deck. So it's an upgrade. Well, looking at the mounting, so this is one of the hangers to raise and lower the deck. And there's that one. They look to be in the same position on the deck. This front mount with the bar, which I require, that front mount is missing, rotted off, busted. Check out that rot hole. Oop, I just broke it. I broke the deck. Anyway, that lift point matches up with this lift point, and there's the other rod I need. So I think, oh, I should also mention, there's this, it's called an anti-sway bar, this rear bar. This lifts up and attaches to the tractor, and that positions the deck underneath so it can't move side to side. The sway bar is the same on this one as this one. Should also mention that this deck was donated to me by a subscriber. I do appreciate it. It's not new by any stretch of the imagination, but like I said earlier, if this deck works, or if it doesn't work, that is going to make or break this project, because I'm not investing in another deck for this tractor. So, if the engine is bad, I can fix it, but the deck has to work. So I'm going to get that deck underneath there and make sure that everything lines up. The belts are going to be different. You can see the pulleys and everything are different positions if you compare the left to right. So what I'll do is I would just order, instead of ordering a deck belt for a 38-inch deck, I would just order the deck belt for the 42, and that should be the appropriate size. The bearings and blades and everything underneath this are no good, but that's fine. We'll do bearings and blades. That's easy enough to do. So I'm going to jettison this one out into the yard. We're going to save this chute though. Just a couple of bolts. Those two little bolts right at the front right there, the little nuts, they hold it on. We'll just unbolt this bracket and bolt the other bracket on with the chute when it comes time. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's get that deck underneath there and see if it mounts up. Oh, I should mention also that this tractor had the very common bent nail cotter pins holding the deck on. I guess cotter pins are way too expensive, so people just stick a nail in there. Whoa. Bend it over, hope for the best. Yeah, well. On to the next step. And we have success. All the mounting points lined up. The replacement deck included all the braces I needed. It goes down, it goes up, fits underneath there. What I'll have to do is just order the belt for a 42-inch deck instead of the 38, and it should just run perfectly. Deck's in decent condition. It's rusty. It's not brand new, but it'll work just fine. There's quite a bit of a downslope on it, so the front bars, the two on the front, they're adjustable. I'm just going to need to tighten those bars up a little bit, and what that'll do is it'll tilt the front of the deck up. That way it goes down nice and level. Yeah, it's doing okay. I gotta take it all off again. Gonna take the deck back out. I'm gonna clean it up, paint it. I'm going to do all the bearings it needs. Gotta order a set of blades for it. These are no good. Worn out. Yeah, clean it up, get it ready to go. And then the next step on this tractor is gonna get running. Alright, so I'm gonna pull that back out. We'll get it up on the sawhorse there and we'll have a look at her. Okay, so here's where we are with the deck. This Craftsman has a heavy duty deck, so it actually has a deck that says heavy duty on it. It's very thick material. I'm not sure, but I think these are 12 gauge and standard decks will be 14 being thinner. But these decks are very heavy. They tend to last, but if you don't clean the grass off the top of these things and underneath, it's not just underneath you got to worry about. All the grass and crap that gathers up on the top here rots them out from the top as well, so it doesn't hurt to blow this stuff off. I personally would use a garden hose to get the top off, because using a pressure washer will blast any lubricant off of the pivots and things up here that should stay lubricated. So I know you're a bit far away there, but you should be able to see what's going on. It's the only way I can get a decent shot of the whole thing. So the blade has one deck on it, or sorry, one blade on it. The deck has one blade on it. Yeah, all right. Okay. This spindle is tight. This spindle was tight. This idler pulley is boogered. I can't change bearings in it. It's two pieces of sheet metal that are put together over a bearing, capturing the bearing and riveted together. So I mean, if I want to drill all the rivets out, but nuts and bolts, I don't want to do that. I could replace the bearing, but idler pulleys are cheap enough. There's two flat idler pulleys here. The flat idler pulleys are the ones that ride on the back side of the belt. Both these idlers are junk, so I'll have to replace those. I went ahead and I took, actually let me get that spring off there. This spring is for the brake, this pivot here. I went ahead and I spun this bearing and it was tight, so I took it off and I just hammered it out with a rubber mallet. So what I found on the top when I cleaned that bearing off, it's a 6203 bearing and it's nice and smooth, free and smooth. I'll bring this one over and I'll show you. This is a larger bearing and it's tight and notchy. It's got real hard spots in it. This is a 6204 bearing. This one's bigger than the top bearing. I stock these. I have a couple in stock. So I'm going to pull these spindles apart. So, should save a few bucks. I got some penetrating oil in that there. We'll try and get this pressed off. See what happens. Anyways, let's go back to the deck. There's a pivot right here for this brake. There's a pivot right here for this brake. Both of those are working fine. They're going to get lubricated. There's a pivot right here that pivots this whole mechanism. That's tight, so that's going to get removed, cleaned, all the rust off it, anti-seize, put it back together, and that should be fine. What else on this deck? Actually, there's not much else to tell about this deck. It's in good shape. It's got some rust on it. We're going to clean it. We're going to paint it. A little bit of lipstick and high heels. Sells lawnmowers. So I'm going to get this spindle taken apart as well. I'll just pop the nut off, take the pulley off. There's a washer underneath. Remove the washer. Just beat the snot out of the top of this thing. I use a rubber mallet to get that off. It won't mushroom the end of the shaft and wreck the threads. So actually, I could probably do that right now. Just for the sake of argument. Big nut. Pulley slides off. Pulley's got a star shape in here. Matches up with the star shape on the spindle. That's so the pulley drives the spindle. Let's see. I'm going to put my hand underneath here to catch that jack shaft. Yeah, that came right out first shot. I just got to get it out of the lower bearing. It's stuck. I'm going to gently use this punch here. I don't want to wreck the threads or anything on that shaft. Does not want to come out. Well, I see why the bearing on that jack shaft came up with the jack shaft. This one here, the bearing is actually stuck in the spindle. Now it's moving. And it's out. So this jack shaft had this little ridge on it that was catching the bearing. Bearing is still in the spindle. But I'm going to get some penetrating oil down in there. I'm just going to squirt it down. It'll flow around the OD of that bearing. And then I can drive it out with the same punch. Okay. I want a little more grunt on this one, so it doesn't matter if I destroy this bearing. I'm going to replace it anyways. It doesn't matter where I hit it, as long as it comes out. And it's moving. And it's out. There's that 6204 bearing that is crunchy and got real hard spots in it. Beautiful. I stock them. I'm down to my last two, and that's good because that's all I need on this mower. Top bearing is beautiful. Super smooth. Nice and clean. This deck actually sat in this position and leaned back for years. I know the history on this deck is actually was sitting with the bottom sides exposed to the outside for years, leaning against the shed. So, well, that'll do it. Oh, that's your problem. Okay, so I'm going to get set up in the vise. We'll get that other jack shaft separated. We'll get the bearing separated off it. Hopefully. Hope for the best. Should come off. I'll come back when that's ready to go back together. I figured I should show you what I'm doing anyways. What I started out with was this screwdriver that has it's got a shank all the way through it, so you can actually beat on it with a hammer and it won't break the handle. And I just went from one side to the other, 180 degrees apart, just trying to work the bearing off the jack shaft here. So just driving the screwdriver in between, and then on this side I went with a small chisel, which is a little wider than the screwdriver. Screwdriver went loose, so I'll go up a size in the chisel. This side's loose now. Let's go up a size in the chisel again. I'm quickly going to have to move to the side of the bearing here. The chisel's bottoming out, so it is moving. It's going up. One side then the other. Seems to be working okay. Slowly working its way up. See if we get that punch in there. Maybe that'll help us. Maybe. It's moving. That's moving. Boink! Bearing's off. Well, it actually turns now. Whoa. Focus. There you go. Crunchy. Bearing popped right off the jack shaft. If you weren't zoomed in so much, you would have seen it pop, came right off the top of the shaft and fell on the floor. So this crustiness here is going to get buzzed down on the wire wheel. I'll use a wire brush on a die grinder. Get this nice and clean because the bearing bottoms out on... Let's get you zoomed out so you can see. There. The bearing bottoms out on this little tiny raised portion here. So I want to make sure that's nice and clean. That way the bearing sits flat on it. And I've had this soaking, so I'll pop that bolt out of there. I've already got blades on my order list. So I guess I could take the spindles off the list because I'll be able to fix these. Nice. Okay. We'll move on to something else. Alright, so I've taken my the jack shafts over to the grinder, got them cleaned up. And now what we're going to do is just pop these seals out of the top of these bearings that we're not changing. We're not going to replace these. I don't want to drive them out. So what I'm going to do is carefully peel the seal off of here so I don't bend it, because it's a metal seal that's coated in rubber. We're just going to take some grease and we're going to force feed that bearing some. The bearing does operate nice and smooth. It's quiet. There's no notchiness in it, but it's also a lube for life bearing. So we're going to add some. There wasn't a lot in it. There isn't a lot of grease in bearings when you buy sealed bearings. They come with a little, but not really a lot. So just work it around. I'm going to turn in the inside race here so the bearings roll around. Push some down in there. Just going to make sure it's nice and full. Then we'll just pop that seal back on there. right back in its home. Make sure it's seated. Outside edge, inside edge. Good. Nice. Yep, still turns smooth. But now I'm confident that it's got enough grease in there. I'll grab a couple of bearings out of stock here. I have 2 left. I have 16 more on order. These are 6204 bearings. These are the bearings that go on the bottom of the spindle. It's a 6203 bearing on the top. So we're going to do the same thing with these. I'll pop that seal out of there. We'll pack them full of grease. You can see how much grease is in there. Not a whole lot, but there's some. We're going to add to it. A little bit in there. Just going to roll it in. Top it off. There's no reason why it's not full. It could be full. There's no reason why they don't fill it. Grease is cheap. Pop that seal back in, flip her over. Watch me stab myself with this little pick. I haven't done it yet. Oh, I haven't done it on camera yet. I think anybody who's ever used one of those picks has stabbed themselves with it at some point or another. That's a given. And man, does it hurt. There we go. That'll do it. That's the one. Let's see what it fits like over that jack shaft. Let's see if it's going to be pressed on or slide all the way down. There's our seating spot. So what'll happen is, because I can't push it down by hand, when it starts in the spindle, as I drive it in, that's going to bottom out. So good. I could drive it down, but it's almost going to go down by hand. I could drive it in, but there's no need to. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other bearing. I'm going to get it started on the other jack shaft, and we'll get it up in the deck there and see what happens. Alright, so I changed my mind. I got that bearing pressed all the way down on the jack shaft. Spins nice and smooth. I popped the seals off both sides, put a little bit of grease in there. What I'm going to do now is, what I did was I went on the bottom of this spindle and I sanded where this bearing sits. Sand it down, make it nice and smooth, and I put a little skiff of grease on there. Hopefully help it slide up there a little easier. So let's get that in. All I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this on there, just a couple of threads. Just like that, so it's not going to fall out on me. We'll hold that nice and straight in the top bearing, tap her underneath with a rubber mallet. That's home. That's the way that goes. Washer goes there, pulley on top, nut on the top, and hit her with the impact gun. Life is easier with an impact gun. Noise alert. Good and tight. This one's done. Let's go over next. Same thing that I did before. I did the same underneath. There we go. Get that bearing seated in there. Good. That one went in easier than the other one actually. Washer. This pulley's a little iffy. There we go. If it's down. The impacto gun. I'm going to hold the bearing up from the bottom again. Well, I don't think that's going to fall off over the first bump. brake holding it here. Got nice thick grease in there. They both spin okay. I think we're laughing. I think we're making good progress. Okay, I've ordered these two idlers. They got to come in at some point. I've ordered a belt. I think what I'll do is I'll Scotch-Brite the top of this deck down. I'll mask off the sticker that shows the belt routing because it's still there. I'll mask off the sticker that says heavy duty because I like it. I'll scuff the whole thing down with Scotch-Brite. Give it some shiny black paint. And then the deck is going to be ready for install. I gotta free up this pivot yet. I'm gonna lube underneath this pivot and underneath this pivot, but I still have to lube the main drive pivot. There. Beautiful. Okay. We still don't know if the thing runs. That's minor. This is major. Running or not, that's minor. We can fix everything. Or replace it if required. Okay. I'm gonna fire up the camera when we got something else. Yeah, I forgot the pivot. So I just pulled the nut off real quick with a small impact gun. A little rust here. A little rust on here. Got a pivot. Whoa, bye. Pivots now. That is a shouldered spacer. Let me get that out of there. I'll show you what I'm talking about. And a washer. I'm going to clean that up too. Okay, so this is a shouldered washer. So what happens is the shoulder passes through the bracket. And it's supposed to stick out the bottom far enough that when you put the bolt and nut together and squish it, what happens is it squishes on the shoulder and not on the bracket. And I'm sure it worked fine when it was new, but over time what happens is you get rust built up in here, you get rust built up here, you get rust built up here, and you get rust built up here, and you get rust built up on the back and here, and all that rust starts to stack. And it gets tighter and tighter and tighter until that shoulder is now not taking all the squish. Now the rust is. And they just stop moving. So, very simple fix. How the heck was this thing? That way. That way. Because this little nut here, that's the cam that pulls your brakes off. This little slot here, when you put your drive on, it pulls on that nut and pushes on this nut, and actually that's what, basically like this. It pivots here, but the action is like this, and it pulls these two brake levers away. Anyways, yeah, that's that. That, and that, and that. It's underneath, I guess. It's underneath on the round part. That definitely is a grease spot. Okay, so I'm going to get a little grinder and I'm going to clean this up. We're going to probably coat that with anti-seize. So there's some, oh, and here as well, underneath here. There we go. Yeah, I wasn't paying attention. This arm doesn't flex. It's a pivot here, but with that shouldered bolt and everything, the shouldered washer, that's what keeps that from turning. And the shouldered washer is what allows this to move. which was not working before. So I'm not sure if you can see both or not, or anyways, what we're looking for is these arms. This arm has to come this way, and this arm has to go that way to release the brakes. So when you engage the blades, this pulley moves. And you see those brake arms moving out off the pulleys. This whole arm has a stop on it that's supposed to sit against this bracket so it doesn't move. It's good. Hook that spring up. Beautiful. That was a lot of anti-seize. But worth it, because it's not going to be an issue down the road. These ones here, I'm not going to take the pivots off for the arms. I'm just going to spray some lube underneath there, just to make sure that they move. Move nicely. I don't want to get everything all greasy. I still got to paint it. So I'll have to give the paint a wipe down where I want to. I'll give the deck a wipe down with brake clean where I want to paint. Works so nice. So smooth. It's a smooth one. Okay. I think we'll move on to masking and painting this deck. Once it's dry overnight, I can get it the heck out of the garage. That way I have room to work on the tractor and get see if it runs, or if we can get it to run.